Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started here in about 1 minute. Let some more people join, and then we'll get started. So thanks again for joining. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So again, thank you for joining today, and thank you to all that have attended in the past. We've had a really good success this year, so I want to thank everyone. Again, for anyone that hasn't attended, my name is Fred Seiler. I'm here at Clear Result, and we shifted over to this webinar series from our in-person conference that we typically do. So I'm going to go through a quick agenda, some thank yous to our sponsors, and then I'll kick it off to Jim for our presentation. So a couple housekeeping notes. All of our attendees are on mute. So if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, make sure to put those in the chat bar to either the left or the right side of your screen. We'll get to those at the end of the presentation, but feel free to put them in throughout the presentation and we'll collect those and then respond to those at the end. And then a recording of the presentation will be available at the website when we're all finished up here. So be sure to go there. Real quick, a thank you to all of our sponsors. Again, our sponsors have been really gracious throughout this interesting time this year, and we were able to shift from an in-person conference that we typically do to an online conference. So they've all been really helpful, and we just want to thank them again. We have Consumers Energy, Semco's Energy Waste Reduction Program, Efficiency United, UPCO, and DTE. So thank you to all of our sponsors. And then, this is the last webinar that we have for this year. And so you have your last chance to get your grill kit. If you attended 2 or more webinars, you'll get this in the mail here in the next couple of weeks. So on the website, there's actually a form that you can fill out where you can put in your mailing address, and I'll send it out hopefully by the beginning of next week, end of next week. You should start seeing those kits come in the mail. So be sure to go to the website and fill that out. I'll also be emailing those that qualify for it, so be sure to check your email. Another thing that we want to make sure that everyone does and fills out is the post-conference survey. So this is our first webinar series that we've done. Really looking forward to and hope that you'll provide your feedback so that we can inform next year's presentations. We're looking for basically how you thought this year went, and then what you want to see next year in terms of an in-person conference versus virtual, if that's possible, and then what kind of topics you want to see. So really important that we get this, we get some good data from you guys. So please be sure to go to the website, mielnergyconference.com. That survey is up now. So right after this presentation, if you can go there and fill it out, I'd really appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jim. Jim's going to talk about retro commissioning. He's a team lead at Foresight Management, and I have a straight bullet from a previous presentation. So sorry about that, Jim. But I'm going to pass it off to him, and we'll go from there. So thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you all for joining. I guess you could call me an energy nerd of sorts. I like making stuff tangible and helping improve things. So the conference, or the topic today, is retro commissioning. I think there's a lot of buzz in the industry at large today about retro commissioning and in the maintenance arena, HVAC arena, but I don't see a lot of action. And as an old guy, you can tell the gray hair, I'll tell you that I think of the hundreds or thousands of buildings I've been in over the last 40 years, I can think of maybe 2 that looked like they were really well run. Other times, not so good. So this idea of retro commissioning is one that is largely because maintenance is easy to let slide. And a lot of buildings are what I call acoustically tuned. If we don't hear any complaints, it must be perfect. So we're gonna start going into, I gotta figure out how to share my screen and see if that works. Not yet. Oops, there we go. That should work. Trusting that you can see my screen.
Yeah, we
Frederick, is
can,
that?
Jim. Yeah, we can see it, but it's in the presenter mode with your notes. So I
Oh,
think if you
okay.
go up to display settings, you might be able to fix
Got it.
that.
Swap.
There you go.
Okay, great. So why bother is kind of the tack I'm taking because people say, well, that's nice, but why should I bother? So we're going to talk about that. The reasons in brief are it's better than ibuprofen. In other words, you get less headaches. Your confidence in the building operation, the comfort of your people, and cash show up instead of cash into your bottom line instead of headaches. And your facility and the people in it become productive because they're no longer worried about comfort problems, maintenance problems, things that aren't working. They're actually engaged in whatever your core business is. So we're going to say, let's try it. Let's consider trying it. Here's a roadmap of what we're going to do today. And I'm in my Sherlock Holmes gear here because this is an investigative effort. We assume there's a crime. There's something wrong with the building because, as I mentioned, like 99.9% of the buildings I've ever been in have some sort of crime going on, energy crime or operational or maintenance crimes. And it's not like we're trying to send anybody to jail, but we want to solve the crime and fix it and make sure it doesn't recur. So here we go. Some of you are probably golfers, and so you know the story in Michigan anyway. We'll just say you don't go to Florida and your golf clubs are sitting in storage all winter. Guess what happens to your golfing skills and your muscle memory and you know the strength of your swing and all that stuff? It's not real pretty come springtime. Well, you know what? Your building is kind of the same thing. If you don't pay attention to it, it doesn't stay at peak performance. And that's kind of obvious. I mean, you get your car tuned up or your tires replaced, your furnace tuned up. Those sorts of things are oftentimes common, but buildings tend, and preventive maintenance, by the way, doesn't count. If you just change filters or lubricate bearings, that's not what we're talking about. So let's look at a picture. The quick story is we'll just say that you had a $250,000 in energy spend, and then you did some lovely commissioning effort and you dropped it down to 200,000. Ooh, big deal. That's a big savings. But then you say everything's hunky-dory and you go do other things. Well, when you go do those other things, it's called persistence. The persistence of your savings it doesn't stay there. You start losing savings, and that erosion can be anywhere from 10 to 20% a year. It's a well-known thing. Lawrence Berkeley National Lab did a big study on retrocommissioning, and essentially they proved it in a couple thousand buildings that it just doesn't work. It's a big impact, but you have to pay attention to it, or you'll lose those savings. So when we talk about retrocommissioning, what is needed, what's wanted, if you're a strip mall store, it's one thing. If you're a big supermarket like Meijer, it's another one. If you're an industrial facility, it's yet another. And so it varies by your complexity, the size of your project, what your particular needs are. And so you're trying to strike a balance. Perfect is not what you're going for. It's practical. And optimal is, you kind of want that, but there's often some budget constraints, and so you say, well, let's go for reasonable, kind of best bang for your buck. In the arenas that we deal, we see commissioning or retrocommissioning specifications, which I'll call military specification. And you know probably that mil spec generally means it's a robust, it's all terrain, all climate, comprehensive, ready for anything, and generally really expensive. Well, we'll just say for a hospital, that might be what you want. But more commonly, you say, let's see what we can do to lean this thing out. We don't want extra fat that isn't going to provide benefit. We want to get great benefit, but maintain reasonable cost. And I'll say just bluntly, when we look at commissioning or retrocommissioning specifications, I say, I don't know how you can bid that because the language is loosey-goosey. They don't specify a lot of details. And as a result, it's common for us to see a bid spread of 3-to-1 or 5-to-1. So if the top bid is 5 times the lowest bid, you say, I think somebody doesn't understand what they're supposed to do. So it's messy. We'll start with the kind of the practical fact of the matter. I say Band-Aids are everywhere, and a Band-Aid is a temporary or makeshift solution, often with a lack of foresight. And my company's name Foresight, so I say pun intended. You want some foresight, and you don't want Band-Aids to stay there. They're not designed to be a long-term fix. So examples, we've got a CPA firm on the top 2 floors, and we ran the HVAC 16 hours a day for 4 months while they were busy in tax season. Oh, we never changed that, doggone. And by the way, they moved out. Oh, there was a discharge temp sensor on a reheat system, and we just kind of overrode the value to make people comfortable. And did we ever fix that? Or did we ever take the override off? Maybe not. Oh, look at that. The heating system is on at 3 a.m. In the spring. Why is that? Oh, we had a problem with the boiler last winter and we forgot to change the schedule. And then we just had a recent big ground coupled heat pump system, which was run in 90-degree condenser water actually in the early summer when it should have been cool from the previous winter. And nobody knew these things until somebody came in to look. And part of the deal is that you can't just look, for example, at a building automation system. You have to know what you're looking for and kind of have that detective hat on and understand what the implications are of what you're looking at. So that's Band-Aids. I say a lot goes under the radar. This is a couple of my grandchildren. There's only one appearing there, but there's actually 2 people. And when you first walk into a building, I say they're acoustically tuned. It's warm enough in the winter, it's cool enough in summer, and there could be a whole lot that's not working properly, but the surface is good. So first glance is not what you want. You want to dig below the surface. We're not talking about fear mongering here. There's too much of that in our world, especially today, but there's an assortment of things. Some of you know what you're looking at here, a vertical inline pump with a 3-way or triple duty valve. This particular pump, it was started out in life as a constant speed pump, and so guess what? They balanced it with the 3-way valve, and it was closed down to about 50% or maybe a little bit more. Somewhere along the line, the pump got a variable speed drive added to it so that it could vary its speed and the amount of flow. Well, guess what? The 3-way valve never got adjusted. That should be wide open when you have a variable speed drive. And so the pump for years was pumping against that extra unnecessary restriction from the 3-way valve. Darn. Here's a nice, relatively new air handler. You look in initially and you say all is well, and then you take the little expanded metal thing off and you say, there's 2 fans and one of them is just frickin' fell off the shaft. How did that happen? And by the way, the system at that time was working fine, but it wasn't going to work so fine in the middle of the summer. And it's not something the building automation system would know about because the motor was spinning and et cetera. So those are things that it's helpful to see and that's what retrocommissioning does. When you walk into a conference room and you see this, you say, I wonder why in the world they would set it for 60 degrees in the summer. And the answer could be a variety of things. Maybe the air conditioning system is undersized. Maybe its condenser coil is clogged. Maybe somebody doesn't understand what they're doing when they set it to 60 degrees. They just wanted it a little cooler, and so they, nailed it at 60. So that's a clue that when you're there, you can say, we could do better than this. And there's probably energy savings associated with that as well. This year, people are very concerned about ventilation and indoor air quality. We've had a bunch of our clients inquiring about what can be done better. And you know what? If you have a building automation system or a data analytics platform, you can show this in graphical form to see whether temperature and humidity is being maintained, CO2 levels, that sort of thing. So that's, and when you're at a building to conduct a retro-commissioning effort, you say, well, you're not tracking this very well. You could do better, and here's how. And by the way, you may want more ventilation or demand control ventilation or something like that. When you're looking at performance, this is a supermarket, and actually we'll just go here. The deal is that the temperature is not being maintained. The set point is this red line, so it's supposed to be 68. It's actually more like 66. Here's a clue. It's the frozen food aisle of a supermarket. And you say, well, I guess it would be cold, but notice that the reheat coil is providing 110 degrees. It's pegged out. It's, in this case, was limited to 110. So this is working its little heart out and still not maintaining the temperature. And we talked to the store manager and said, so is anybody complaining in the frozen food? Actually, we didn't even say frozen food. We said, anybody complaining about comfort? Nope, everybody's fine. Well, then we say, how about the frozen food area? Oh, no complaints there. And so essentially we said, why do we want to have this higher set point and cause all this extra heat to be used? So there's some adjustments that could be made, but who knew? It's just a cool thing. If you know what you're looking at and you're kind of digging in with the Sherlock Holmes hat on, then you can discover things and save money, and that doesn't cost anything, by the way. Here's another, oops, I went too far. Here's another one. This blue squiggly line, up, down, up, down, up, down, is the temperature downstream of the cooling coil. The compressor is jumping around like a chipmunk on crack. And that's going to wear out the compressor. It doesn't provide the best temperature control. And so you say, well, if you see that, you say, you know what, we could do better than that. It happens to be, for those of you who are HVAC folk, is a DX compressor, so you expect a little bit of jumping around, but that was a little excessive, I think. And then I think the last one here, maybe not quite the last, but if you have a 10-year-old system, a 15 or 20-year-old system, the way they controlled those systems back 10 years ago or 20 years ago, there's better ways to do things. So best practices are no longer best practices. There's better ways of doing things. And the better ways of doing things generally have two aspects. One of them is they save money, and two, if you have a building automation system, it's just a little programming change. So it's cheap, very cheap. There's no hardware required generally, a little occasionally sometimes. And in case it escaped your notice, this is a simple rooftop unit that we put all the actuators and temperature sensors and all that. There's 10 sensors, 3 motors, 4 actuators, and that's just a simple one. So controlling this, it's easy to kind of lose track and miss a trick, and things are not working the way you expect. But the analysis of retro-commissioning helps you say, oh, shoot, that's not right. Let's fix it. And what does fix it mean? It's generally reprogramming or something like that. So it's pretty simple, pretty low cost, and very helpful. Last kind of basic thing, we'll just say you have an old boiler. That's an old atmospheric draft boiler. Its seasonal efficiency or annual efficiency is probably like 60%. And we'll just say that it's starting to require some more frequent maintenance. Well, shoot, you can go up to a, essentially 50% better efficiency to a condensing boiler and get rid of your headaches of maintenance at the same time. If you say, well, let's, instead of, tolerating that extra maintenance and the shutdowns and the comfort complaints and all that, let's replace it now while we have a choice. Remember, if it fails over Christmas break, you're not going to get your best choice. You're just going to find out whatever's at the wholesaler's warehouse and put in that. So you may not have as much choice if you take a proactive approach. Similarly, rooftop unit, this one doesn't have an economizer. Well, shoot, it's old. If it's older and we replace it, we can upgrade. And then finally, if your building automation system doesn't have all the latest features, then it needs to grow up. Remote access, trend capability, programming updates, like I mentioned. That's something that that one actually is a little pricey, but there's great benefits in terms of comfort, convenience, and confidence. Then while you're at it, this is a chart of what you've got for utility use, and there's seasonal differences, weekly differences, and utility rate structures are dramatically different today than they were 10 or 15 years ago. And your building's current rate structure may be costing you a lot of money and you don't know it because you haven't reviewed it. So in the process of retro commissioning, while you're getting a clear understanding of how the building works, you could also take a look at whether the rate structure is appropriate. There are time of use rate structures, for example, primary and secondary rates. Those things, we've literally had clients save tens of thousands of dollars just for a simple call to the utility and changing their rate structure. So kind of wrapping up here, it's helpful to define success. And of course, life is never perfectly smooth, but we like the idea of more perfect or better. And if you could reduce callbacks from your maintenance people and headaches caused by people being, kind of ongoing unhappy in your building, then you'd have no more ibuprofen. That's a good thing. If maintenance became easier and more effective and more predictable, then that would be good. If longevity of your equipment was improved, that would be good. If your operating expenses are down and net operating income is up, that's good. One of the problems, so to speak, of retro commissioning is that it's hard to measure avoided cost. And on the one hand, when you're doing this sort of a project, you see an opportunity. You say, well, shoot, that's not working. This could be improved. That's not optimal. And you change those things. The client says, well, you're going to charge me $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 for whatever these changes are. And they say, well, how much is it going to save? Savings are not so easy to calculate. Depending on the what you're proposing, there are some simpler tools to help estimate that. But it's not like we already did the project and now we can see what happens in the utility bills. It's a little messier, but still, some of this stuff is slam dunk easy, and other stuff is realistically good and it's worth pursuing. So last thing, just as a reminder, have you ever seen a 4-seater bicycle? Well, I didn't either until a couple years ago at I think it was an auto show. And it's a good representation of the fact that no two buildings are the same. You may think your building is very similar to some, say, other office building, but it isn't. Every building has unique schedules, unique people needs, unique HVAC. And by the way, even if you had identical HVAC, it's still not a cookie cutter because your HVAC has been maintained differently, operates differently, the controls are a little differently calibrated and all those things. So don't assume they're the same. Treat your building as the unique structure that it is. So I'm hoping that you really don't think everything is fine in your building, that you've got a little bit of a sense of jadedness, but you also have ideas that you can capture top performance and you can get your occupants to be more contented. And that, by the way, if you understand what's going on, you can solve the problem. So your challenge now is to go do something. And that's a little easier said than done, but it's not that hard. It's a matter of if you're there and you're paying attention, you can make a big impact. That's it for retro commissioning today.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or the question bar should be on your screen. And Jim, I had a couple questions that I thought of. Where would you start if you don't know where to start or don't know what to take a look at first? How would you start this process?
Well, Frederick, this is going to sound too simple, but you haven't been in that building. So I essentially go in and ask for a tour, and I want a tour with someone who's well familiar with the building operations, and maybe in addition, someone who's also well familiar with the equipment in the building. And so then I play dumb and I say, tell me what goes on in here. What goes on during the weekday? What goes on the weekend? Well, do you have one shift, two shifts, three shifts? Oh, you have some manufacturing equipment over there. How often does that run? You know, what's your typical maintenance? So just I ask a bunch of questions. And since I have, what do you call it? Sort of the big picture of how these things may fit together in terms of your, operational effectiveness, comfort, energy costs. Then you get a little thread and you say, oh yeah, that's always causing us problem. Well, tell me about that. What kind of problems? So it's kind of play dumb, but also ask questions that will help flesh out the whole understanding of how that building works. So that's where you start. And then you can dig in if something's working great, or we'll just say it's brand new or something. You say, well, I can check a few things there, but I'm going to spend a little more time on that boiler system or that makeup air system or something else that looks like it might need more attention. And frankly, when you're talking to people, one of the questions I ask is, so tell me about your maintenance. Do you have a preventive maintenance contract? Oh yeah, we have a preventive maintenance. Well, how do you specify what's done during preventive maintenance? Oh, we just change filters. So if they have sort of a bottom level preventive maintenance program, you say, I think there's something to check into. And similarly, people have building automation systems. How often do you look at it? Who knows how to use it? And if nobody does, then guess what? Nobody knows what's going on in the building.
Great. Yeah. If anybody else has any more questions, you can put them in the chat. But otherwise, we're gonna wrap up here. Again, thank you, Jim. See if I can get my screen to share. There we go. Thank you for your help today and for presenting, and thank you to everyone that attended today and any of our webinars this year. Again, thank you to all of our sponsors, to everyone that was able to participate. We can't thank you enough. So again, please, please, please take the post-conference survey. We really want to hear what worked, what didn't work for you, and what you'd like to see in years to come. It was a little bit of a challenge this year, but I think we were able to get some really good speakers and some good content out there. So be sure to go to the website for any of those conferences that you missed. The webinars will be up on the website for you to get there. And you can always send us a chat there if you have any questions or want to follow up with one of the speakers. We're happy to get you their contact information and kind of go from there. So be on the lookout in your email. There should be one coming today about the webinar survey. It'll be after the post webinar email that comes from GoToWebinar, and then we'll also be sending one through our marketing automation. The typical kind of sales pitchy email that we've been sending out. So please be sure to fill those out. And then if you've attended a couple of these webinars, be sure to get us your mailing information, and we'll get that kit out to you as well. So again, thanks, Jim. And I hope everyone has a good day and a safe and happy holiday.
My pleasure, and thanks, same to you.